Trust me, I've pissed off my fair share of gamers, and probably will continue to do so. In fact, let's do that right now. Right, before I jump headfirst into this video, which I will bet heavily will not do well and will cause me to hemorrhage subs because the gaming community on YouTube is undoubtedly the weakest, most brittle bunch of gimps when it comes to handling any dissenting opinion. By the way, if that offends you, it's because you know it includes you, now piss off. Anyway, far as this whole thing of lewdness in gaming is concerned, because for some bloody reason this conversation is like VD, it always comes back. It started with Kangman Lee expressing his desire to ban pornography on religious grounds, with Ackman, who's rarely right about anything, replying, "I think you are losing followers because you just exposed yourself as one of many who pretend to understand the teachings of Jesus." This man is not a Christian, mind you, but instead use the Bible and Christ as a weapon to enforce your dogmatic beliefs on the world and limit the freedom of others. To which I politely replied, "Every society enforces a moral code, you stupid fuck. Shut the fuck up. My word gamers are retarded." Very righteous of me, I think we can all agree. By the way, Ackman, not that you would understand this concept, but if your so-called freedom involves repetitious engagement in a vice, you're not free, you're a slave to it. Secondly, think of, or rather try in your case, I know it must be a challenge, the difference between free to and free from, and then ask yourself who or what enforces the latter. Then we had Smash JT, a man who calls himself internet entertainer and retard. No lies detected, hats off for honesty I suppose, but anyway, saying, safe bet, every single person who wants to ban porn has some serious, massive skeletons in their closet and a checkered AF past history to boot. Hide behind Jesus all you want, all it does is tell me you're projecting. Pot kettle much, well, at least he's proven the retarded bit to be true. They're not hiding behind Jesus either. They're actively using religion to justify the why. My word, these people are seriously stupid. And that's not a safe bet at all. I'll bet my life I have less skeletons in my closet than you do yours, pal. And I replied, no, this is the same pathetic excuse of, oh, if you don't like gays, you must secretly be one yourself. No, that person really just doesn't like homosexuals. And you idiots know there's money to be made in telling tit-addicted dysgenic gamers anyone who refuses to feed them their pixelated fix is a threat. Now fuck off. By the way, some of the replies to that post, speaking of VD, bloody hell. I trust a porn user over a religious person any day, Smash. Presumably because for them entering a church carries a risk of spontaneous combustion. You know what's quite strange though? This mentality only exists with sex. If you said you want to get rid of caffeine, no one thinks you're a coffee fiend. If you wanted to ban alcohol, no one thinks you're a drunk. If you want to get rid of drugs, no one thinks you're a junkie. But for some reason, if you wish to mitigate the damages of pornography, which are extensive, it's because you're secretly into it. Where the hell is the logic in that? Projection my ass. It's because these losers want to normalize their degeneracy so they don't feel shame for being degenerate losers. Now, because I think this is all massively cringe and gay, let me outline the factions involved with this seemingly endless spiel. There's actually 3 of them. Group 1, the religious types. Group 2, the gooners, who seem to be unable to play any game featuring a female unless she has tits rivaling the size of their own. And then there's the rarely mentioned Group 3, actual bloody gamers. Now, what do I mean by actual gamers? I'll give a sample criteria. If I put a controller in your hand, launch Tekken 3, and your muscle memory from 3 decades ago kicks in at the drop of a dime, if you can still remember Mortal Kombat 2 fatality combos just by looking at the character, if I chuck you into Vice City and you can recall 5 weapon spawn locations without even needing a map, those kinds of flexes make you a gamer. If you spend less time talking about games and more time actually playing them, you're a real gamer. In case this isn't obvious by now, my eye is reserved for Group 2, the gooners, and especially the content creators thereof, because these people are not gamers, nor do they give a flying crap about gaming. What they are cheap, low-grade drama whores peddling clickbait crap to the lowest common denominator. For all the anti-woke slop these hypocrites crank out repeatedly, they are just as ideologically dogmatic as the cult they claim to oppose. Now, the reason I make this distinction is because I have seen firsthand just how faction-driven this segment of YouTube really is. They cannot separate an opinion from a group, and they will see one agreement with someone as an endorsement of everything that person's ever said, which is an incredibly stupid, unrealistic standard no one is ever held to. Like, these people are very hostile to any opinions that will rock the boat and piss off the audience. All they do is feed them what they want to hear, because all these people care about is the algorithm and making money. That's why I stopped making videos on anything game related, because the overwhelming majority of it is just kind of crap, and my word, it is really bloody boring. You know, when I first saw that point crystal clear as day, that French IGN article about Stellar Blade, whilst the overwhelming majority of so-called gaming content creators hopped on board the bandwagon and pushed their conformist talking points, I, not being a lazy bandwagon hopper and far better than these wankers, actually read the article. And shout out to Harmful Opinions, absolutely base massive respect for actually also reading the article and noting that the overwhelming majority of it, the author is lavishing the game with glowing praise. I don't know about any of these idiots, but when I read about a game, the main thing I'm concerned with is how does the game actually play? I do not go into the article looking for political conformity and ideological rigidity. Unlike the frothing peasants who lost their minds because the author wasn't glazing even playing the game with a raging stiffy like every other degenerate loser who watched the trailer. This is why if I want to watch gaming content that actually talks about games, I'll go watch Yahtzee on Second Wind. Now, I've mentioned this before and I'll mention it here again. In an age where capitalism seems to be hell-bent on hollowing out every existing IP with sequels, remakes, and remasters in order to make a safe buck, all that you're doing by substituting the woke signal for tits and ass is replacing one piss-poor market signal with the lowest common denominator, sex appeal, which is done purely because a horde of adolescent-minded imbeciles will buy anything so long as it features cleavage large enough to drown themselves in. If you actually care about making something niche and interesting, you have to be willing not only to take a risk, but make something for reasons beyond merely the monetary. Good luck with that. Now, beyond simply that, I'll end this by explaining the reality of society these lemmings have never given thought to. There's only two modes of regulation: internal, morality and religion, and external, the power of the state. If you wish to stave off the latter, then you better bolster the former. Let's use a real-world example: abortion. Now, I'm sure many of you know of people, or perhaps you yourselves were at one point, pro-choice, because pro-choice was pitched as safe, legal, and rare. Rare being the key variable there. And then somewhere along the line, pro-choice became pro-abortion, with women, barely, openly celebrating it, glorifying it, and many people found that to be so revolting, borderline demonic, they became pro-life. You substituted shame and decency for unmitigated freedom. And in case I need to spell it out for the oddly few enduring morons who made it this far, unmitigated freedom without a set of standards is a recipe for chaos and disaster. Same thing applies to pornography. It's everywhere, and it pisses people off because you have no shame or sense of decency. And seeing as you are unable to get that through your thick skulls, now people will seek to use the power of the state. Welcome to actions have consequences. Again, these people are no different than the woke crowd they claim to oppose, especially when it comes to sexuality. If you piss and moan about any rainbow hippie propaganda, but you advertise what appeals to your sexuality, you're full of shit. If you want other people to keep it in the bedroom but you don't, you're a hypocrite. You don't get to say jack shit. If I visit your ex profile and see it's nothing but a collage of gargantuan anime tits, what do you think that says about you? If you visited mine and it was nothing but me knocking back whiskeys, what would you think of me? Again, all these people are trying to do is justify their degeneracy by trying to mainstream it under the guise of popularity and freedom. Just because everyone else around you is doing drugs doesn't make it good. These people's creation cycles largely revolve around bitching about other people shoving their ideologies in other people's faces. Yet when they do the exact same thing, suddenly the dumbstruck Pikachu faces can't fathom why people don't like them either. Will they see the irony in any of this? Hell no, of course they won't. In case this needs to be said, I'm a guy. I obviously don't have any issues with boobs. What I do have an issue with, though, are the legions of dysgenic degenerates who, upon seeing a parrot, just fucking turn into one. Cheers for watching. Once again, I apologize for nothing.